Thurrock are facing a triple whammy of increased council tax of 50%, reduced public services, and a borrowing on £1 billion worth of emergency funding, which is 1% above base. That 1% is £10 million approximately per year that's going to the Treasury that could be spent on frontline services in Thurrock. Will the Prime Minister commit to reducing that rate so the money can go where it belongs?
Well, I thank you for his question. The last government made life...
Reeves accused. Rachel Reeves accused of misleading on defence budged. These titles rephrase the original, emphasizing the controversy and accusations surrounding Reeves' statements on defence spending. The political arena in the UK is once again embroiled in accusations of dishonesty, this time centred on Chancellor Rachel Reeves and her claims about defence spending. What has been presented by the government as an increase in the defence budget is, according to vocal critics, nothing more than a cynical reclassification of existing funds. This alleged deception has sparked outrage among commentators and the public alike, who accuse the government of attempting to pull the wool over the eyes of a discerning electorate. The crux of the controversy lies in the integration of the intelligence budget into the overall defence budget. While this manoeuvre on paper appears to inflate defence spending, critics argue that it does not represent an actual injection of new money into the military. Instead, it is merely a shuffling of figures, designed to create the illusion of increased investment in national security without any tangible additional financial commitment. This sleight of hand, opponents argue, is a transparent attempt to mislead the public and sidestep genuine accountability for defence preparedness. The debate gained significant traction following an interview with Rachel Reeves on LBC, where host Nick Ferrari pressed her on this very issue. Ferrari, lauded by some as one of the few remaining impartial voices on the station, confronted the Chancellor with the assertion that her claims about rising defence spending were disingenuous. The core of his argument, echoed by numerous commentators, is that simply merging the intelligence budget with the defence budget does not constitute a rise in spending. It's the same money, just presented differently, to give the impression of a more robust financial commitment to defence. This tactical accounting, critics contend, is symptomatic of a broader pattern of obfuscation and misdirection from the current government. The outrage extends beyond mere financial misrepresentation. The very definition of defence spending, particularly in the context of NATO obligations, is being brought into question. Intelligence spending, while undoubtedly crucial for national security, often falls under the umbrella of civil defence rather than direct military defence. This distinction is important because NATO's guidelines for defence spending typically focus on the latter, emphasising direct military capabilities and readiness. By folding intelligence budgets into defence, the government is not only inflating its figures but also, according to some, blurring the lines of internationally recognised defence expenditure definitions. This strategic reclassification, therefore, is seen not as a genuine effort to strengthen national defence, but as a spin tactic, an attempt to make it appear as though they are fulfilling their duties when, in fact, they are falling short. The political rhetoric surrounding defence spending is also under intense scrutiny. The government has repeatedly stated its ambition to spend 3% of GDP on defence, a target that critics argue they are nowhere near achieving. Furthermore, NATO itself has set an even more ambitious target of 3.5% within 5 years, a goal that many believe the UK government is highly unlikely to meet. And then there's the wildcard, President Donald Trump's demand for a 5% immediate increase in defence spending from NATO members, a demand that, while perhaps extreme, highlights the significant gap between current UK spending and the expectations of key allies. The perception that the government is merely trying their best to look good while completely destroying the economy adds another layer of cynicism to the debate. The argument is that with a struggling economy, the very notion of increased defence spending becomes paradoxical. Critics sarcastically suggest that if the economy continues on its current trajectory, the country will be in such a dilapidated state that even potential adversaries like Putin wouldn't want this country. This bleak assessment paints a picture of a nation in decline, where even the prospect of foreign interest is diminished, leading to the despairing conclusion that Britain is becoming, a state so undesirable that even those from less developed nations might view it as down market. The frustration expressed by many commentators stems not just from the alleged lies themselves, but from the perceived arrogance of those in power. The belief that politicians think they're going to get away with this fuels a sense of indignation among those who feel that the intelligence of the public is consistently underestimated. The repeated cycle of alleged deception, exposure, and then further attempts at spin creates a deep-seated distrust in political discourse. The exasperation is palpable. It's the lies, it's the fact that they think they're going to get away with it that really annoys me. This constant cycle of accusation and denial, of financial reclassification and public outcry, underscores a broader crisis of confidence in government. When fundamental figures like defense spending are subject to such intense debate over their veracity, it erodes trust in official statements and reinforces the perception of a political class more interested in image management than substantive policy. The question then becomes not just about the specific numbers, but about the very nature of truth and transparency in governance. The ongoing scrutiny from figures like Nick Ferrari and the wider media ensures that these alleged misrepresentations do not go unchallenged, forcing a conversation that delves beyond headline figures into the underlying motivations and implications of government actions. The public, it seems, is no longer willing to accept superficial explanations, demanding genuine accountability for how their money is spent and how their nation is defended. The escalating row over Rachel Reeves' claims regarding UK defence spending has transcended a mere budgetary dispute, morphing into a potent symbol of perceived government duplicity and economic mismanagement. The initial spark from Nick Ferrari's LBC interview, highlighting the alleged merging of intelligence and defence budgets to inflate figures, has ignited a wider conflagration of criticism, questioning the very integrity of official communications and the strategic direction of the nation. At the heart of the contention is the accusation that the government is engaged in an act of financial reclassification rather than genuine investment. By reportedly subsuming the intelligence budget within the broader defense budget, the official figures for defense spending appear to swell. However, critics vehemently argue that this maneuver does not represent an actual infusion of new capital into the armed forces. Instead, it is characterized as an accounting trick, a deceptive reshuffling of existing resources designed to project an image of increased military expenditure without incurring any additional financial commitment. This alleged illusion, opponents contend, is a cynical attempt to pacify public concerns about national security while avoiding the difficult choices of genuinely increasing defense outlays in a strained economic climate. The implications of this alleged budgetary sleight of hand extend beyond domestic financial transparency. Beyond the specific figures, the criticism reflects a deeper cynicism about the government's overall economic stewardship. The argument is made that while the government attempts to project an image of strength in defense, its broader economic policies are leading the country towards decline. The stark imagery of the UK becoming a whole or down market, to the point where even other nations facing significant challenges would deem it undesirable, underscores a profound disillusionment with the current economic trajectory. This bleak outlook suggests that if the economy falters significantly, the very concept of a strong defense becomes moot, as the nation itself would be in a state of disrepair. The pervasive sense of betrayal stems not only from the alleged deception itself but from the perceived arrogance of the political class. The idea that those in power believe they can consistently get away with such tactics is particularly galling to critics. This perceived underestimation of public intelligence fuels a deep-seated distrust in political discourse, contributing to a cycle where accusations of dishonesty are met with official denials, which are then met with further skepticism. The demand for truth and transparency has become a battle cry, as the public and commentators alike express frustration with what they see as a consistent pattern of obfuscation. The continued vigilance of independent voices and media outlets in challenging official narratives becomes paramount in such an environment, ensuring that these alleged misrepresentations are not allowed to stand unchallenged. The pressure on the government to provide clear, verifiable evidence of its defense spending and to outline a credible, long-term strategy for national security is immense. How they navigate this complex web of accusations, economic realities, and international expectations will be a defining challenge, shaping not only their immediate political future but also the public's perception of their integrity and competence. The recent public discourse surrounding Chancellor Rachel Reeves' statements on defense spending has morphed into a full-blown political maelstrom, far exceeding a simple debate over budgetary allocations. What began as pointed questioning from figures like LBC's Nick Ferrari has escalated into widespread accusations of governmental deceit, casting a long shadow over the current administration's commitment to national security and fiscal transparency. They argue that this consolidation of funds does not represent an actual infusion of new money into the armed forces but rather a deceptive reclassification of existing resources, designed to create the illusion of a robust defense investment without incurring additional financial commitment. The perception is that the government is attempting to pull the wool over the eyes of a discerning public, sidestepping genuine accountability for defense preparedness in a strained economic climate. The implications of this alleged budgetary sleight of hand reverberate beyond domestic financial transparency, directly impacting international obligations and alliances, particularly within NATO. NATO's defense spending guidelines primarily focus on direct military capabilities, including equipment, personnel, and readiness. Intelligence gathering, while undeniably crucial for national security, often falls under a distinct category, sometimes categorized as civil defense. By conflating these budgets, critics contend that the UK risks misrepresenting its true defense spending in the eyes of its allies, potentially undermining its credibility and commitment to collective security. This strategic blurring of lines is thus seen not as a genuine effort to bolster national defense, but as a politically motivated spin tactic aimed at meeting arbitrary targets on paper, irrespective of actual military strengthening. For example, while the government touts an increase to 2.6% of GDP for defense, critics quickly point out that this figure only reaches that level by including intelligence spending, which historically has not been fully counted under NATO's defense expenditure definition. The government's aspirational target to increase defense spending to 3% of GDP by 2034 faces increasing skepticism in light of these alleged maneuvers. This long-term ambition is contrasted with the more immediate and stringent NATO target of 3.5% within 5 years, and the outspoken demands from figures like Donald Trump for an immediate 5% contribution from NATO members. The significant gap between the UK's current defence expenditure, even with the reclassified figures, and the expectations of key allies highlights a perceived lack of genuine commitment. This perceived inability or unwillingness to meet these benchmarks, coupled with the alleged deceptive accounting, paints a concerning picture of the UK's dedication to its defence responsibilities on the global stage. Adding to the complexity is the broader context of the UK's economic situation. Critics argue that while the government endeavours to project an image of strength in defence, its overall economic policies are leading the country towards decline. The stark imagery of the UK becoming a whole or down market, to the point where even individuals from less developed nations might view it unfavourably, underscores a profound disillusionment with the current economic trajectory. This bleak outlook suggests that if the economy falters significantly, the very concept of a strong defence becomes moot, as the nation itself would be in a state of disrepair, lacking the fundamental economic stability required to sustain a robust military. The recent spending review, while pledging increases for various sectors including defence, has also drawn criticism for not clearly explaining how these ambitious commitments will be funded, leading to warnings of looming tax hikes and a spend now, tax later approach. The pervasive sense of betrayal among critics stems not only from the alleged deception itself but from a deep-seated frustration with the perceived arrogance of the political class. The notion that those in power believe they can consistently get away with such transparent tactics is particularly galling to those who feel that the intelligence of the public is routinely underestimated. This perceived underestimation fuels a profound distrust in political discourse, contributing to a cycle where accusations of dishonesty are met with official denials, which are then met with further skepticism, creating a seemingly endless loop of suspicion and dissatisfaction. This ongoing debate, therefore, extends far beyond the confines of defense spending. It serves as a potent microcosm of a broader crisis of public confidence in government. When core financial figures, central to national security and international standing, are subject to such intense allegations of manipulation, it erodes the very foundations of trust between the governed and the governing. It reinforces a narrative of politicians prioritizing spin and image management over substantive policy and genuine accountability. The continued vigilance of independent voices and media outlets in challenging official narratives becomes paramount in such an environment, ensuring that these alleged misrepresentations are not allowed to stand unchallenged. The immense pressure on the government to provide clear, verifiable evidence of its defense spending and to outline a credible, long-term strategy for national security is undeniable. How they navigate this complex web of accusations, economic realities, and international expectations will be a defining challenge, shaping not only their immediate political future but also the public's perception of their integrity and competence. The outcome of this debate will undoubtedly leave a lasting mark on the political landscape, influencing how future governments approach transparency, fiscal responsibility, and national defense in an increasingly scrutinizing public sphere. The swirling accusations of dishonesty surrounding Chancellor Rachel Reeves' pronouncements on defence spending have escalated, now drawing attention to deeper, systemic concerns about the UK's economic trajectory and the erosion of public trust in government. What began as pointed questioning about the precise figures has broadened into a fundamental debate about the transparency of public finance and the integrity of political communication. At the core of the controversy remains the alleged reclassification of the intelligence budget into the defence budget. While government officials continue to frame this as a legitimate method to present a comprehensive view of national security spending, critics are unwavering in their condemnation, labeling it a cynical exercise in creative accounting. Their argument is stark: This move does not represent a genuine injection of new funds into the armed forces but rather a strategic reshuffling of existing resources, designed to artificially inflate defense spending figures. This, they contend, allows the government to sidestep the difficult political and economic decisions that a true increase in defense expenditure would demand, especially in a period marked by significant economic instability and competing public service demands. The prevailing sentiment among detractors is that the government is more preoccupied with the optics of meeting defense spending targets than with the actual, tangible strengthening of military capabilities. The ramifications of this alleged budgetary manipulation extend significantly into the international arena, profoundly impacting the UK's standing within NATO and its broader diplomatic relationships. NATO operates on specific, often strict, guidelines for defense expenditure, primarily focusing on direct military capabilities, including equipment procurement, personnel costs, and operational readiness. Intelligence spending, while undeniably crucial for national security, has historically been treated as a distinct category, sometimes classified as broader security or civil defense functions. By integrating these budgets, critics argue, the UK risks misrepresenting its true defense commitment to its allies, potentially undermining its credibility and influence within the alliance. This perceived strategic ambiguity could lead to questions from other member states about the UK's genuine contribution to collective security, particularly as some NATO members face internal pressure to increase their own defense spending. The government's recent announcement to increase defense spending to 2.6% of GDP by 2027, explicitly including intelligence spending, does little to assuage these concerns, with critics quick to point out that this figure still falls short of NATO's aspirational 3.5% target by 2035, let alone more aggressive demands from figures like Donald Trump for a 5% immediate contribution. This ongoing disparity in reporting and actual investment could strain alliances at a time of heightened global instability. The government's long-term aspirational target to increase defense spending to 3% of GDP by 2034 is viewed with considerable skepticism, not just because of the accounting methods, but also due to the broader economic context. This distant target feels less like a firm commitment and more like a deferral, particularly when contrasted with the more immediate and pressing international expectations. The perceived reluctance to genuinely invest more, coupled with accusations of misleading financial reporting, further complicates the UK's diplomatic and security relationships. The economic climate, characterised by persistent high inflation, a cost of living crisis, and sluggish growth, creates a challenging backdrop for any significant increase in public spending. Indeed, the debate is deeply intertwined with a broader critique of the government's economic stewardship. Critics argue that the current administration, while attempting to project an image of strength in defense, is simultaneously presiding over a national economic decline. The stark imagery, as articulated by some commentators, of the UK becoming a whole or down market, to the extent that it would be undesirable even for those from nations traditionally facing significant challenges, underscores a profound disillusionment with the current economic trajectory. This bleak outlook suggests that if the national economy continues to falter, the very foundation for sustaining a robust defense becomes illusory, as the nation would lack the fundamental economic stability required to support a strong military. Recent financial statements and spending reviews, which have outlined increases for various sectors including defense, have also drawn considerable criticism for their lack of transparency on funding mechanisms, leading to warnings of impending tax increases and a spend now, tax later approach that could further burden an already struggling populace and hinder long-term economic recovery. The burden on taxpayers is already significant, and any perception of funds being merely shuffled rather than genuinely increased only adds to public frustration. The pervasive sense of public distrust is not solely rooted in the specific allegations of financial manipulation but also stems from a profound frustration with what is widely perceived as the political class's arrogance. The notion that those in power believe they can consistently get away with transparent tactics like budget reclassification is particularly galling to a public that increasingly feels its intelligence is routinely underestimated. This perceived lack of respect fuels a deep-seated cynicism towards political discourse, contributing to a self-perpetuating cycle where accusations of dishonesty are met with official denials, which are then met with further skepticism. This creates an environment of perpetual suspicion and dissatisfaction, making it increasingly difficult for the government to build consensus or secure public buy-in for its policies. The public's demand for genuine truth and verifiable transparency has become a battle cry, as they express increasing exasperation with what they see as a consistent pattern of obfuscation and prioritizing image over substantive policy, particularly when it comes to fundamental issues like national security. This ongoing political debate, therefore, extends far beyond the confines of mere defense spending figures. It serves as a potent microcosm of a broader crisis of public confidence in the integrity and competence of government.